Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining in the conversation. We've got another great and exciting episode for you guys today. And again, just as a reminder, you can join the conversation at any time with changeitself.com or Change Itself on LinkedIn. And we invite you to, like and comment and ring the bell and share your thoughts as we do on social media. And we're looking forward to all of your feedback as we create this great content for you. We've got a great conversation, and we're joined again with Eric Demers today. Eric, how you doing?
Very good. Yourself?
Very good, very good. And I'm pretty excited about this episode since we're focusing on culture and the cultural climate of a workplace and an organization. And we've got a great guest joining us today to talk about certain philosophies and frameworks with Joseph Turchyn, an engineer and a project lead with Syncrude. And welcome aboard, Joseph.
Thank you. Good morning.
Yeah, very good to have you. So, we had a few discussions in the past about what we're going to talk about today, and it was really exciting to hear about what you're working on and the different philosophies that you're diving into, and informing yourself and also checking into the data on how culture is actually perceived and how it's measured in an organization in a workplace. So maybe we can just dive right into it. What have you been up to?
Well, yeah, well, hey, nice catching up with you again, Gus, and good to meet you, Eric. Yeah, you know what? I guess I just want to let everyone know I'm going to be speaking on behalf of myself personally, but yeah, I do have, about 20 years experience in engineering, construction, industry. Worked in hard rock mining back in my days in Sudbury with you guys, and then switched over to oil and gas. Worked in nuclear. And it's really interesting when you reflect back on that time. And fortunately, I've been blessed that every project and every job that I've worked on, everyone's gone home safely. And it's when you look back on that, you kind of go like, well, how the heck did we do that? What made us unique or what made us different? And and really, I think that's what every organization is trying to figure out. It's what differentiates, that successful project or that successful job that is able to get everyone home safely at the end of the day versus the ones that are struggling. And even within an organization, which, may have a lot of the same values and processes and systems and procedures, you could still have pockets within that organization that are struggling. And what are the differences? And you know what? I look back on it, and a lot of it does have to do with that culture and the climate that we created. And there's a quote out there that I think it was Peter Drucker that said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." And I was thinking about that before this podcast, and that's a pretty powerful statement. And when I think of culture, if I were to define it, it's yeah, it's the values and the attitudes and the beliefs of an organization in terms of the aspiration, but on the applied side of it, which we can call the climate, it's really putting those values into action, and it's the behaviors of the people and the teams and the workers. And when I look back on how we generated success, it was the interaction, the actual behaviors of the people on the job, and how we looked out for each other, how we connected, how we cared for all the workers as one team, working together and collaborating. And, you know, I'm the last one to take credit for it. I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of amazing leaders and work with a lot of amazing people over the years. And, I remember something that one of my old leaders would say is, I would never put another man on or a woman on a job that I wouldn't do myself, and I wouldn't feel comfortable even having my own kids do that job. And treating people like family and really caring for each other and looking out for each other, and making it safe to communicate. I think those are some of the major elements of success, and not even necessarily knowing what we were doing at the time, but what we were doing was building a culture that drove safety and helped us get everyone home safely.
So question for you on that, Joseph, is it one person building that culture? Was it did it just happen? Is it something that was cultivated over time? What was your experience?
Yeah, I think it's definitely cultivated over time. Um, and I think it's multiple layers. You got to have every layer of your organization is got to be walking the talk and aligned on those values and really putting those values into action. Because and then yeah, and then you do have those exceptional leaders, and I've been fortunate to work with many exceptional leaders, from the frontline leadership all the way to the second line and up the chain. But it's that alignment of those values, and then the alignment of putting those values into action that really helps build that culture, and then it reciprocates. And where it gets really powerful is when you've got that bottom up approach where the crews themselves, the people, the folks that are on the tools, they see the support, they see the care from the leadership, and they also see that they have a seat at the table, that they're part of the solution. And that's when I think you start seeing the really positive results, because it doesn't help for somebody like myself to come to a toolbox chat and act like I have all the answers, because it's the opposite. A lot of the best solutions are coming from the people doing the work. And the way I saw my role is my job is to make sure that, well, one, I'm engaging them, two, I'm empowering them, and I'm listening to their feedback, and I'm going and getting the support that they need. And then from there, I need support from, the second line. This was back when I was in a frontline role. And now that I'm more of a second line role, I've got to do that for the front line. I got to really understand what they're dealing with, what they're going through. And the better connected I am with them and understand what they're going through, the better I can support them.
Every worker deserves to go home safely at the end of the day. Book a demo with Sofvie to discover how their groundbreaking EHS management software empowers workers to proactively avoid hazards and how organizations like yours can cultivate a stronger work culture. Visit them at sofvie.com to learn more. Technica Mining is a premier underground mining and construction contractor. They stand for delivering quality project work on time and on budget through innovative thinking. Their excellent safety record, experienced workforce, and large equipment fleet will guarantee the timely completion of all your project needs. Trusted by the world's leading mining companies, Technica Mining has over 20 years of experience in mine construction, development, and production. Contact Technica Mining to take your next mining project to the next level. Visit them at technicamining.com. Change Itself is produced by Crownsmen, the voice of industry. Check out more, including The Crownsman Show, Mining Now, The Building Energy Show, and Agriculture Now at crownsman.com.
And that was an interesting part that we discussed a while back around, like every layer of the organization lives the realities of that layer in full force. And when you look at, for example, like the C-suite or the C-level layer, in contrast to the workforce that's right in the field, there's a tremendous gap there, right? And we try to fill that gap with having different layers in between so that we can escalate from layer to layer. But then what ends up happening is, you end up believing that you're in a current state that you are, and everybody in your layer also believes it because you're discussing it all the time, and that becomes 100% of your reality, right? And then you go for a walk in the field and you realize that the Kool-Aid that you've been drinking is slightly different than what's going on. So how do you propose that people are able to audit that climate as it scales across an organization?
Yeah, the audit aspect. Yeah, I think where we're going with the auditing aspect is we really got to start looking at what are those leading indicators. Because if you're starting to measure your safety culture based on a lagging indicator, it's too late. We got to get ahead of it. And there's things like, all right, well, how are the front lines interacting with the crews? How many times are they having touch points with the crews? You could, you could look at things like, well, how many times are they pointing out and communicating risks in the field, even if they have to stop work, right? We want to track those things because that means somebody's actually taking the initiative. They're intervening, they're rectifying risks and hazards. Track it. Those are all proactive approaches of improving the work phase for safety.
So I find it interesting that you're on the topic of touch points and engagement, because the one thing that I've found in the last probably year and a half of doing this work and exploring health and safety and culture in general is, like, as much as you want to, measure a particular outcome or a particular kind of process, you'll see people that don't meet their targets, for example, yet their safety record is impeccable. There's something they're doing, that they're engaging with people and they're engaging with their workforce. Like, those touch points are still there. They're still in the field having conversations with people. So it's really interesting to be measuring and try and understand something other than, like, did you fill out Form X? Which I don't know about your experience, but is that something you've seen?
What really matters is the intention. It's, when leaders are getting on the field and they're having those touch points and they're interacting with the crews, understand their challenges, that's what really matters. I think when you start getting into compliance overload, it can be almost distracting. And it's not that it's not important to go out and make sure that these checks are happening, and and there's other safety compliance checks that are happening, and so the auditing aspect is important, and I think you got to embrace it, because but it's got to be done in a positive way, and it can't be overloading to the point where it's distracting the actual work that's happening.
I've experimented with it with my team here a little bit, where we've actually taken on with, for a while last year, we tried it where we took off kind of targets. We had a kind of different experience where nothing was being recorded at that point because you just kind of forgot about it, or it was like, seemed like it was more work to go into it. So having that there kind of created a space and an expectation that some of it needs to be recorded. So it was quite interesting to see happen. And maybe another question I got for you on the culture piece is, you talked about touch points, and as I'm starting to experience that engagement piece, it's not always a pat on the back. Like, first, sometimes it is, but there's times where, like, somebody setting an expectation or having a, like, just knowing that you're there and that they're watching and they're aware of what you're doing and they're there to support you, whether it's good or bad. Sometimes that feedback is a touch point. I don't know if that's kind of what you've experienced.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, there's going to be constructive critiques out there. Of course, there's going to be interventions. When you see something that's unsafe, you have to intervene, but you want to set a precedence that it's in a way where you care about people. You're looking out for them, and what you want to build is not this punitive culture where you're out to get them. You want to build the culture, and you really need to set the example where, people are going to make mistakes. It happens. But if it's a mistake and we can learn from it, we can improve from it, then go out there to help them improve. Explain to them why it matters, what could go wrong, right? And build that culture where they're actually looking out for each other. And when you got teams that are intervening on each other, as opposed to, just when safety's around or just when the supervisor's around, I mean, that's what you want. You want that discretional effort when nobody's looking. And I think the only way we can get there is, there will be constructive critiques, but it's in a way that you're helping them out. You're looking out for them. You're not trying to send them down the highway, and getting blacklisted from site. No, these are are talented people and they got the skills that we need, why would we want to send them down the highway and when we can actually help them and we can educate them and support them?
And it's interesting because inside that transformation, because especially when you're taking a group that's performance based in the context of completing what was asked of them, right? So completing what was asked of them is the goalpost that they're measuring success, rather than measuring success based on group collaboration and safe outputs, right? That's a goalpost that's tough to change and it's tough to alter. Like we talk about this a lot of times where you got to take a round at all costs, or you got to do what needs to get done at all costs because it's got a significant financial impact to the company. But at the same time, sending somebody home in a stretcher or worse has an equal or greater significance to the company, the team, the morale, and families and communities around them. So I think when people are measuring the significance of the outcome of performance based on the true unwanted outcomes, I think that's probably what we're talking about, right? Is that caring for each other is a success metric.
Yeah.
How do you? I guess you touched on it a little bit earlier where you were talking about you're measuring leading indicators rather than lagging indicators. There's some are there examples of what you're measuring as far as leading indicators go?
Well, I think a safety audit, for example, would be a leading indicator. All right, so we've got all these different processes, systems, procedures, rules. All right, how are we doing it? It's not to say that you need safety out there every day, doing an audit every day, where it just becomes distracting and overwhelming. But you know what? I think the crew's got to put it into practice, build those habits. And it should be just done first and foremost with the crew, with the frontline leaders, and just building it into their habits. And then so that way, when the safety audit comes, embrace it. Be like, yeah, we got this. We're going to knock it out of the park. And they want to show those results. They want to show that, yeah, we're on top of our game. We know exactly what we're doing. We're professionals. We got everything that we need to do this job right. And yeah, there's always going to be pressure when it comes to schedule or production. And that's the true test between culture and climate, because it's easy to say that safety is top priority.
It's not easy to do.
And it's easy to talk the talk, but it's not easy to walk the talk. And from my experience is that when you start with safety, the rest comes. That you have I'm looking at my job right now, and I tell the crew, like, this is one of the best organized jobs I've ever seen. Lots of complicated millwright work, lots of pieces and components, and it's so organized, so clean. The access and egress routes are perfect. They're handling, 30, 40,000 pound pieces. It's got to be like that. They can't afford to have an untidy area, but they've just built that into their practice. And even though it started with safety as the priority, it actually helps the job become more productive. And, it's little things like just to talk about, we think of it as a cross-functional team where, yeah, we got millwrights, we got electricians, we got scaffolders, we got, engineering, technical, quality, safety, but really it's break down the silos. At the end of the day, we're all in it together and we're all working on this job together and we're all going to succeed together. And when you start seeing the dynamics where the crews are interacting with each other, millwrights are helping the electricians are helping the millwrights. They're aware of what each other's got going on. They're talking to each other. They know the changing dynamics of the workplace. That's that one team approach where now you're starting to build that culture into your climate.
We had what we call Technica Day last week, and that's where everybody gets together in one room and we share a little bit about the different projects. And you're touching about like breaking silos and having different departments together. And I'm thinking of the one presentation there, jabbing at each other, but not in a bad way, as in like they're working well together. It was just a demonstration of silos being broken, but it was this thing about rarity of electrical sweat being the cure for cancer, and they were celebrating that the electricians were at times operating rock trucks if that was required, or doing other manual labor tasks while there was no electrical work to be done, and they were looking out for each other. And that was one of the whole team was aligned. And just to touch back on what you're talking about, so it's really cool to kind of reflect back on something anecdotal that I just observed, and what you're saying in talking about this. So it was really cool.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, you get so much value from those conversations because, if I'm the project lead, I'm only one person, right? I only got one perspective. But then when you got everybody working together, well, there's 8 millwrights, you got 7 electricians and instrument techs, you got 5 scaffolders, you got all the construction coordinators, then you even got the technical folks coming in. And now you got everybody talking about safety first, and then we do the job. But everyone's starting with safety and how we can perform safely. And then you start getting feedback and be like, yeah, you know what, there's it's 30 kilometers an hour on our site, and there's people coming around, and we're handling equipment, and this is where we're offloading and bringing in material from our warehouse. But we need to slow them down because we got to back up with forklifts in this area. And just little ideas. Oh yeah, well, let's put some slower speed signage and pedestrian walkways to get them aware. Let's talk to roads and grounds. They weren't aware that people are in this area, so they weren't doing as good a job as they could with sanding the roads and the parking lot. Little simple things, but just comes out of conversation and feedback. And it's all these ideas. And then, like I said earlier, my job is just to make sure that these ideas are getting supported, because every single one of these ideas we got well over 50 people on this job that I'm working on right now. So I got 50 different perspectives, 50 different brains that all have great ideas on how to execute this work, still get the job done. Everybody wants to succeed and get results, but do it safely. And then when you start supporting them, and then I got other layers of leadership that are supporting me and that believe that, hey, yes, it's an investment up front. Yes, it takes a little bit of time up front. Another example is we got some piping and valve removals coming up, and the crew is starting on the 5th, but we brought them in early to make sure that they can be 100% set up with the job. They're planning their scope before they're even starting. They're having conversations with scaffolders before they're starting. They're having conversations with the other crews to be aware of what's going on. And hey, we got to remove grading in this area. It's going to create an open hole. Is that going to give you a problem? But it's all through that communication and connection and being proactive with that approach where we're actually able to get these great ideas. And like I said, it's not from me. Most of the great ideas are from the crew.
Joe, maybe let me ask you one other question. When Gus and I were first talking about this episode, he mentioned something about the 5 C's of culture and something around competency and culture. What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So yeah, you need the competency and the capacity. Yeah, we were just kind of spitballing, just kind of talking about, yeah, there's culture, there's climate, there's the capacity. And then with the capacity is you need the competence. And the competence really is, as far as I'm concerned, that's the education piece. That's the skills. That's the experience. And yeah, like on this job, it's we're working on a specialty turbine, and you can't just expect people that have never worked on a turbine before to come in and have the knowledge and the experience that we need to be successful. So we're making sure that we have those competencies built into our team.
So if I hear you correctly, capacity was around having the space to have a good culture. So in this case, for safety, is creating that space to stop the work or to get people's involvement in questions. And then in order for people to be able to deliver on the culture that you're trying to build, there's certain competencies that they need to have, certain level of experience. And if they don't have it, you're making a point of teaching and onboarding them, I guess, to that role or that position. In this case, that turbine.
I think the capacity is more of the ability to resource the team.
Okay.
Are there any gaps? Are there any missing pieces of the puzzle that we need? And I love this conversation, especially with the crews, because I flat out asked them and I challenged them to not be afraid to speak up. If there's anything that you need to do this job better, you have a voice. You have a voice and your voice matters. And I look at, like, mining, oil and gas. We're some of the most well-resourced companies in the world. So if there's a better way to do something, I would love to have a conversation with somebody trying to explain why we can't or why we're not. So that's the capacity. And I think a lot of people just have excuses as to why they're not supporting their teams with the right resources and capacity that they need. Because it's definitely possible. Yeah, it might take, you might lose a day, but you're going to gain days back by doing it right. Yeah, it's an investment. You look at things like, well, yeah, maybe they could go and do that work at heights with a ladder, and it's cheaper than having to build a scaffold. But when you do build the scaffold, well, now they're set up to do that job, and they're not going up and down a ladder constantly all day long. So it's little things. So you can, if there is a better way to do the job, why aren't we doing it? And now the competence side of thing, I think, is more on the knowledge base, the training, the skills. Do they really understand the procedures? Are they trained and proficient in the skills and the tools that they need to use to do that work safely?
Would you say that the blend of the team is also part of the confidence as well? As because you have individual competence to participate in the activity, but if you need a blend of people and then you identify, hey, to do this job properly, we actually need an industrial mechanic to be part of this team for us to be successful.
Yeah.
Right? They look at the entire scope of the work and take a look at the team and where are the gaps, not only on the resources side from equipment, materials, and facilitations, but do we have the right team members put together, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's when you're building that org chart, you really got to think, what am I missing? And you know what? If you need to subcontract the right specialty and bring them in, even if it's temporary, why not? And we're doing that constantly. We got to bring in, I got vendors, field service engineers that are here from Italy because they know the tolerances and the specs of the turbine better than anyone. And we needed that knowledge at our fingertips, readily available, so that we're not going through, 1,000-page OEM just to understand all the intricacies. We needed to support our team to make sure that they had that knowledge readily available.
Yeah, and to mitigate the risk ahead of time, as far as catching the like you said, catching the gaps on the fly, you're closing the gaps before you even get there, right? So
and then that all goes back to that connection. By being connected with the teams, by having those conversations, those collaborative, workshops and discussions, break down the silos, because that's how somebody like me can really understand what the team needs. And if I'm not having those conversations, or if we're not having the conversations, how do you know? And it's, everybody wants to do the best they can. And sometimes, maybe it's pride, maybe it's they don't want to admit that they don't know something or that they're not comfortable with something, but you got to make it safe for them to speak up and say, hey, maybe we should get a specialist here. Maybe we should take the time to understand this better, because if not, we're taking a chance. We're taking a risk. But if I'm not aware of that chance or risk because people are afraid to talk, then I got a problem.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So,
right on. Well, this has been an awesome conversation. And like we spoke before, I mean, we could probably go on for a long time talking about the different intricacies of the workplace and how to create that safe, productive workplace that everybody feels empowered to be part of. So as a closing statement, Joseph, what would be your number one advice for people out there listening as to where to start first? Where do you start first to implementing that culture of choice?
I think think of your team as a family. Yeah. Think of everyone on the crew, everyone on the job. What if it was your own kids out there? How would you want to set them up to be successful? Start there. And really you got to walk the talk. If you're saying safety is top priority, you can't budge. You've got to keep that consistent and put those values into action. And when you build on that foundation and you got teams that are connected and working together, and they know that you care, you're going to get amazing discretional effort. You're still going to get the work done. If not, it'll be better than ever, because they know that they're so well supported to succeed on that job. You're going to get tremendous results.
Right on. No, thanks for that. And one of the things that we like to kind of sneak into our episodes is a little bit of a tech talk, right? With new technologies, because I mean, there's so much happening these days. And for example, like this major job that you're on now with that power station that you're reigniting, have you come across any interesting technologies that have really made a massive difference into enabling your team to perform like you've never seen before, or things that you want to try? What have you come across anything?
Yeah, well, I guess there's lots of little things that have come up over the years. Even in terms of like the design itself and like three-dimensional models and different survey and measuring tools. I'm pretty amazed with what our millwrights are working with our machinists, and they got like these rover arm measurement tools, as opposed to, they still use the old dials for alignment, but they also have some pretty intricate measurement tools and laser surveys, and we've got to be within 2,000ths of an inch. So our tolerances are extremely tight, and it's got to be perfect. So some of the tools that I'm seeing them use in terms of getting those that accuracy that we need is pretty phenomenal. And just supporting the team with the digitalization of information. I don't even think we're quite there yet, but I think we can get there. We're using SharePoint sites where we could readily share information with the crews, things like the three-dimensional design model. Other jobs, we're doing full 3D twin, digital twin of our plant to interface between existing and new build. So that's already happening. It's coming. It's great to see that. I'm old fashioned. I still like the in-person stuff. We've got just simple like whiteboard communication boards where the crews are talking about safety focus, kind of their tasks for the day, and getting together and almost having a toolbox together, using those communication boards. But yeah, I think the opportunity is there to get it digital, to get it, in their hands. And what I love about that is it's fast. They got all the information they need. It's transparent, and they're connected. So I know with the Sofvie technology, I'm excited to see where that's going, because really it's just another tool to help people be more connected.
Well, just to kind of allude to what you're talking about, getting like feedback from the people doing the work, that's one of the most tremendous things we've experienced from that, is you're getting that the boots on the ground and exactly what's happening in that feedback. It's kind of hard from a transparency. It's kind of hard to hide when you got a picture of what's going on and like the person's telling you, you better get in action. You better be supporting it. And it's sort of forcing you to walk the talk. So it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, I guess my concern right now is, like what if I know I don't have like a bad frontline team, but what if there was somebody that was just really pushing the schedule over safety, for example? How would I know?
Yeah.
Right. Unless I'm going out, and that's why I do go out there and connect with myself.
Yeah.
But that's where it can get frightening, right? There are people that are willing to take chances and shortcuts, just to get it done and trying to get the attaboy or the attagirl because they got the job done fast. And there still is that mentality out there. And what we're trying to say is, we want the job done, but let's do it right.
For sure.
Right is more important than fast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hey, Joey, I really appreciate the time that you spent with us. And I think this is a great conversation for our audience and for ourselves. I mean, we selfishly learned the most probably with the episodes, and we're super happy to be able to share this with everybody else. And looking forward to staying in touch and learning more from you and learning more about what's going on with Syncrude and Suncor as you guys crest over to different ways of operation with everything that's going on in the world. And Eric, thanks again for joining in, and looking forward to extend the conversation some more. And for everybody watching, once again, go ahead and leave your comments. There's a lot of links and information in the details below where you can get information about Joseph, Eric, and myself. We're looking forward to your feedback, and we'll see you next time. So join us again on changeyourself.com or on LinkedIn, and we'll keep the message alive.